Rotor. And so hello, Brussels, I guess?
Brussels, indeed.
Okay. Hello from Berlin.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. So we are going to go straight in.
We should introduce ourselves.
Okay. I'm Sam from ONOFF, and this is Dan and Ali, and Burke to my left. So, we're going to ask you a bunch of questions.
Like your names?
Like your name.
I'm Lionel de Vliet.
And I'm also Lionel, but Lionel Bia.
Okay. Two Lionels. Two Lionels from Rotor. So, first question is, like about beginnings, like who you are and how you started. Yeah, I guess that's it, basically.
Yeah.
Small intro.
A small intro. We are definitely a collective. We started in 2006. I don't need to go into the details, but we started as an initiative to try and track all the industrial surpluses that were available in Belgium, surplus materials that byproducts that might be interesting for the world of design and for industry in general. And let's say the main purpose in the beginning was not to produce designs or to build architecture, but we build a database of available materials and products.
Okay.
So that then turned into something else, into a collaboration between different people. Gradually, the group became bigger, and we're now 9 members with collaborators. So let's say roughly a group of 20 people.
And this was around which year that this kind of...
So we started in 2005, 2006, and then the picture you see are the temporary offices we built in 2006, just to house all our research in. But that's let's say that temporary office became like our main or most important starting project. As such, and our first encounter with the realm of architecture and design.
And was this kind of first office connected to a project, or?
That was really self-imposed. Like we needed a workspace. We were looking for a very cheap workspace in the center of Brussels, and then we quickly decided it might be interesting not to look and rent a space, but to build one ourselves. So we found materials that we could use on a temporary basis, like these yellow beams and the whole scaffolding structure.
Yeah.
Rented out by a company that is providing materials for formwork on building sites. And the rest of the materials are just industrial leftovers.
Okay. Yeah, when I was in architecture school, this image, the one on the left, was shared a lot between students.
The one on the left, yeah, that's...
Yeah, even if we didn't know what was going on, it kind of gave some sort of hope for a future practice.
Well, it's still a project we're very happy about. It did exactly what it needed to do. So it housed us, it gave us some visibility, and then it was neatly dismantled afterwards and sent back to its users.
Okay.
So our second question is sort of on a bigger scale. We were wondering if you see your work related to other similar collectives, either historically or contemporary.
Sorry, I didn't hear that question quite well.
Okay, sorry, it's also written on the thing, you can see it says, I was just asking if you see your work related to other similar collectives, either historical or contemporary.
Well, we definitely see ourselves related to all the people who did like research and creative work in group, and I would say that would be a very long list, and it's difficult to pick out like one specific reference we have in that context, but it could be as well. I don't know, an academic department or a rock band, so to speak. But it's the fact of working together and making better work when you're together than when you're alone that is really crucial for us, that principle. And so we take inspiration from many people that have been working collectively.
Okay, we put a picture of Mata Clark, if you don't mind.
We don't mind.
Okay, great. But so connected to this idea, so you obviously there are many references and sources of inspiration, but you were mentioning principles, and the third question has to do a bit with that. Is there like politics informing your practice? And if so, could you talk about it? And if not, why isn't there?
Why don't you want to talk about it?
Or why don't you want to talk about it? But is there a politics like supporting your work or informing your work? And if you could connect it to the Oslo Triennale, kind of make a bridge with that, could also be helpful.
Okay.
Next question.
Well, you mean like ethical guidelines, or a set of ethical guidelines in that sense, or you're talking really about a political agenda?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's your interpretation of the word politics also. So. But yeah, it could be an agenda or...
Well, when you say politics in the sense of policy making or contributing to policy making, then we definitely see that there is that dimension to what we do. In the sense that we feel concerned by the way things are being organized, and if possible, if we have the impression that like rewriting legislations is the way to proceed, then we will try to do that. But it's like we have the impression that we intervene in different ways in function of the kind of problem we're confronted with. And as you know, there is like one agenda we try to push all of the time, which is promoting the reuse of building components, just because we think it's common sense to do that. And sometimes it's the way we push that agenda is by making inspiring designs or something that is innovative in terms of designs, but sometimes it's also by helping, I don't know, the Brussels government to rewrite the way it regulates waste management, or through conducting ourselves a dismantling operation. But obviously, when you talk about that core agenda of promoting the reuse of building components, there is an environmental agenda behind that, obviously, and I would say that it's for many years we try to avoid talking about that environmental agenda because we found it slightly embarrassing to have to advertise ourselves. The fact that there's a strange noise going on there. Is that you?
It might be from us. Sorry.
No problem. No, I was saying that it's, you know.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, you avoid talking about it. Yeah, because it becomes too, cringeworthy almost to talk about it. And if you talk about it too much, you know it will get appropriated somehow. So it's better to avoid it or create new words even sometimes or terms.
But yeah, I mean, it's also that in the world of design, you have so many people that are advertising what they are doing more than that they're effectively doing it, and that is especially the case in sustainable design, in the sense that people are advertising their newness and let's say that's the metric I mentioned.
Okay, and how does this, and this ties in a bit with your approach to the Oslo Triennale, I guess, with this whole more critical approach to the sort of greenwashing aspect of sustainability, and also this idea that, from what we read, that you are collecting different narratives or ways of how people interpret sustainability or produce their versions of sustainability.
Yeah, it's a good question, but I don't think the work around the Oslo Architecture Channel was a denunciation of greenwashing. On the contrary, all the projects we selected for this exhibition were actually we found in one or another way, and where the authors of it really believed in what they were doing. So it was indeed a way to talk about different visions about sustainable architectures, or just to put in dialogue different approaches that have been followed in the past 3 or 4 decades in the name of sustainability. But we hope it went. It was not a mere denunciation of greenwashing. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, indeed. In the selection of the projects we were putting forward in the exhibition, we imposed ourselves the rule that we were not going to show like the most base forms of greenwashing. But still, as you know, there is on the architecture scene, on the design scene, there is a lot of advertising greenness, and so there's a moment that you have to filter through that, or to be able to talk in a very honest and direct way about what is effectively trying to achieve sustainable goals, and what is mostly just experimenting with the imagery around it. And so let's say the whole Triennale was conceived as a moment where people could just talk flat out and openly about all the dimensions of the projects that were laid on the table. It was like a naked view on these projects, and most of them were honest, not all of them. Some were completely naive, but we think there is a need for a bit more naivety, but in the meantime, let's say a kind of rational common sense in the way sustainability is approached. But what I wanted to say is that when before in 2006, 2007, we were advocating the reuse of building components, we tried not to put that into too much into a green agenda or to defend it as such. Well, it definitely was part of some kind of a green agenda, but now we were less embarrassed about that, in the sense that we realize there is a kind of sustainable architecture as a given exists, and somebody will claim it. If you don't do it, and if somebody else will do it, then Siemens will do it, or I don't know, polyurethane foam producers. So there is a kind of the public is part of the public is asking for initiatives to come forward, and now we're not so much embarrassed to be one of the initiatives.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a good segue to the next question, which was, what is the role of the public in your projects? So, for example, maybe with the databases that you were just talking about.
Yeah, sorry, just to elaborate a little bit on that, we usually have these participatory workshop collectives and this kind of circles we talk with, but in your practice it's more creating databases and how the public uses them, I guess. So if you could elaborate on that. And I also didn't get the name Rotor as part of the first question. Does that have to do with recycling, or how does that name come about?
Well, Rotor is essentially a meaningless word, and it was a kind of stand-in. The idea is that you can project on it whatever you want, but obviously it's also a palindrome, and it works with the arrows. It works mainly as a logo, and it obviously evokes some form of circularity. Now, talking about recycling, then it's a sensitive term for us, in the sense that much of what we advocate, like reusing, is standing in opposition with recycling as a kind of waste management technique. So we try to avoid being associated with recycling, if you see what I mean in the technical sense of the word. But for the rest, Rotor as such is not meaning much, and that's a virtue of the term.
Also very embarrassing to talk about names most of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we could go back to the question of how you see the role of the public in your projects. Public here is written in quotations, so open to your interpretation. But maybe if you can connect it. I mean, through your website, we found 4 projects that are connected to this database theme. Your own database, Rotor, the opalis.be, the legal and practical guidelines, so the documents, written documents. So all these combined, are these your tools? That some are open to the public, some are closed or confidential? How does this work?
But, well, let's say usually we try to make out and to know who we are working for, and the different initiatives you've named, such as Opalis or that Vademecum, the legal, let's say, guides. They're targeted to a very specific public. Like the Opalis network is targeted to everybody who is looking for second-hand building materials. That could be like a contractor, that could be like a private user, could also be like, I don't know, somebody who's about to start a building project. The legal guidelines, that's really targeted to public authorities that are struggling with the legal dimensions of setting up a reclamation project. So it's, let's say we don't have, I understand that many of the collectives you've been interviewing have a practice of design for the public realm. And you will have seen that in almost none of our projects are just built out in the public. Probably something that distinguishes us of many collectives that are around for the moment is that we're pushing our agenda, but we don't do that through structures built out in the open. And we don't have an immediate expertise in terms of public space as such. So it happened to us to do it, but it was in very specific context, like when we were building for, I don't know, arts festival in Brussels in 2009, 2010. But since then, it's quite rare. We designed many exhibitions, but then we have a kind of profile of the visitor that will come.
Yeah.
It's indeed so that in some cases there is a target group we are considering in the beginning of a project, and sometimes there is, as a kind of side effect, there is another target group that will benefit from it. Like, to give a concrete example, is the website opalis.be was in the beginning addressed to architects or builders, so they can find reused materials, reliable sources of reused materials. But after that, it also played a crucial role as an argument in political discussions about materials management at the scale of the region or of the country. I mean, the fact we could easily show that there was an existing sector, was a kind of not fully organized, but still a professional sector for reused material, was a really strong argument. And Opalis.be was a kind of what do you say, of evidence of it. So we could use it for a completely different target group as a powerful argument. So yeah, it's hard to have a complete control on who will be the target group of something.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say target group, you mean you are connecting to this, you are connecting the second-hand material market to, let's say, architects or designers. You're making this connection, I guess.
Yeah, it was yeah, indeed. But in the end, it was also useful to convince some policymakers
Okay. Yeah.
about general policy in terms of materials management.
And this happened like naturally through your projects that you got into this world, and also like I imagine personal interest from hoarding materials and scavenging. I can imagine. I see this interest in collecting and yeah, archiving almost, and so now that like a curiosity that we have, once you've stepped into this world, you step into also a very like informal world of, you know, dealers and people who work in the demolishing industry and then have their, you know, their networks and all this kind of stuff. And architects and designers jumping into this, have you felt any difficulty or some like, I don't know, sketchy areas and that are hard to navigate in terms of material mafia?
Okay.
You were talking about a very formal or informal?
Informal.
Informal, you meant, yeah.
I mean, the world we see at our very small scale of materials and projects is very informal, but maybe for you guys it's on a level that's more formal now, because if you're trying, with these guidelines and if you're speaking to municipalities and policy making, etc., it goes into a more formal world, I'd say.
Well, you might say that much of what we do for the moment, or much of our efforts have been conducted towards pulling reuse out of that informality and giving it some formality, in the sense that obviously as anyone in the beginning, or the first projects we did were extremely formal. We went on demolition sites ourselves, and the guy who was operating the crane, we asked him whether we could, I don't know, use these few steel I-beams and take them away, pull them from the building site, and then we haul them over, carrying them to our own project. That was the beginning, and we soon realized it was very unpractical. It was also like half illegal, and there was no real deal implied in it. And obviously, much of the existing reuse sector is working on that basis, with all the haziness that goes along with that. And we think it's if you want to take reuse seriously, you have to be able to bring it to architects, and they need to be able to integrate these products or these building materials into their project with some form of legitimacy, also towards their commissioners. So it needs to be legally okay, it needs to be logistically okay, it needs to be aesthetically okay, etc. So it's that to achieve that, you need lots of players, and part of our time we spend it like having contacts with real estate developers that are owning like tens of thousands of square meters of office space in Brussels, and that's the kind of people we have to deal with. So indeed, we talk with municipalities, we talk with very big contractors, also demolition contractors. So it's like a different league, but it's the only way we see to give really a bit of legitimacy.
And in terms of the projects that you initiate yourself, and the projects that kind of are financially bringing in money, I mean, our question is, we have this is a question for us all the time, is how to make money from our projects. So the question is, how do you pay the bills?
Okay. it's maybe the first thing we can say about that is that we try to have very let's say a diversified range of income sources. So some of the research projects we realized were commissioned by public players here in Belgium. Other projects were for private commission. Recently, if we're talking about the more operational side of our work, when we organize dismantling operations in building, then it's for the biggest part financed by the retail of the selling of the materials. So that's also the last years became actually a big part of our income, or half of it.
Yeah, it's essentially we don't do work that is not paid. Oh, we almost don't do that. We did it in the beginning, but we always saw that as an investment. But it's true that let's say we were lucky enough, or I don't know, it was like an attitude we had that we tried to find paid work that allowed us to let's broaden our knowledge of the field. So we did some research project on waste management, or the management of waste streams in the Brussels region. That it's often tedious work. It's very complicated. You work on statistics, you work on building sites, etc. But it allowed us to learn an awful lot, and it's like empirical knowledge. That was that has been something that we always try to do. So when we accept work, to be sure that it's work that is gonna give us something back. But even if we do design projects that are hardly break even, or not generating any extra income, still it needs to produce like a basic income to design work for us. It's so most of our work is really I mean, is born in a direct relationship with the commissioner. And so he's engaging, or he or she is engaging himself to a certain outcome, and we too. So it's for the rest, self-initiated projects. It's like what we set up now recently, Rotor deconstruction, as a kind of spin-off of our own of Rotor itself. That is definitely a self-initiated project, but it's also an investment in something that is now already making money on itself, as a unit that's been through the selling of the building components we
Continuing this theme of
You get a tour of their office.
maybe.
Sorry, I just I see some books behind you. I was wondering if you were in the studio or if you could give us a quick little video just to.
This is this is just a part of our library. This is just a small meeting room we have, which is also serving as a library where we can work in isolation. What did you want to know?
I mean, we're just interested in. Okay, the question is, if you said you're how many people? 9 people with 11 employees, or if you work with interns and just your working environment. So I thought maybe a tour, or if you could just show us a little bit around the space would be interesting as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's easy and useful to walk around here. You have to imagine we're sitting. I don't know.
So part of the work is being done here in our offices in the center of Brussels, but we also have a workshop and a warehouse in the north of the city, more in a kind of a industrial suburb. And there we have, it's like 1,000 square meters of warehouse. We also stock our materials there. So part of the team is working here in the offices, and the other part is on the there in our warehouse. And about the questions related to the interns, we have one intern for the moment, and yes, they are compensated.
Great.
Yeah.
You want to know how much I get a month?
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. They get 800 euros and a meal. And obviously, we have a kind of network of people that are like renting apartments, and we try to help them in finding the best deals for housing, for food and stuff like that. But it's though Brussels is still an okay city to live in quite cheaply. So with that sum of money, you can cover your basic expenses. That's you don't have to invest. It's obviously you have to watch out.
Okay, should we ask this a question from the audience?
The audience has a question. Lasse from Oslo.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long time do Rotor spend on dismantling reselling process? The English is a bit off.
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, I'll repeat again. Lasse from Oslo. How long time?
It's like 3 questions.
How much time does Rotor spend on the dismantling reselling process? I guess maybe he wants to know the balance, like in your practice of design and this more material flow aspect of your work. How would you?
So the management of these deconstruction projects is one of the let's say it's a young activity at Rotor. Our first experimental project on that matter was I think in 2013, so 3 years ago. And, but in the last year, it became became a big part of the work at Rotor. I think that maybe 1/3 of the working time we invest is dedicated to these dismantling projects. And in terms of volume, last year we reclaimed, and I think more than 400 tons of materials, but from interior finishings. So if you reclaim 400 tons of concrete, it's easy, but to reclaim 400 tons of interior finishings, it's a lot more, and this comes from 15 different buildings. So that gives an idea of the importance of this part of the work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a lot of time.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of carrying and organizing. Yeah. And do you? I just thought of something. Do you connect this with teaching somehow, with education? Like, I mean, I can imagine workshops, but in a more like
Outreach.
sorry,
Outreach.
yeah. Or architecture school in Brussels, basically.
Well, it's something that we'd love it to be a bit more easy, because obviously we see the enormous potential, and even for us, taking something apart, it's like anatomizing a building. You learn an awful lot about how these buildings were put together, and but it's a bit difficult to just turn that into a class, in the sense that the building sites are usually, I mean, in terms of security and safety, not the easiest places to walk around.
Sure.
So, it would take a bit of effort to try to set up a frame that would allow to bring students on the construction sites.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it were possible, then it would only be a few students, and it would be very much accompanied, and they would have to sign like a 15 pages document before stepping on the building site. Also, obviously, with the owners accompanying. So it's something I would say in the long term we hope that someday something might be possible. But on the other hand, we're involved a bit in like workshop-based student projects that are approaching conditions that we find in our deconstruction project. And so we have one project going on in Lausanne for the moment with OPFL. And then our colleague somebody there was involved in a project in Bergen, in the Bergen School of Architecture.
Mm-hmm.
That involved like taking concrete away to arrange, make an underground space available. But that's more, it's redesigning an existing structure. So it's almost re-architecture.
Sure. Well, hopefully it will become more common in architecture schools. I guess, like, when I spoke about, like, in my school, that image was shared a lot. I think it also had to do with this frustration or this, like, of wanting to be more in the construction site, of having a more close relation to the material. I mean, we were always looking at details and sections, but we never saw them in real life. Unless you had a friend or someone in the family who was in the business, or someone in your family was more techie or had a garage. But the rest would be very abstract, and there was always a kind of longing for that. And we would see some of our friends in other crafts or other professions, like medical school, going into the hospital in the second year, with all the dangers involved. I mean, there's also some risks involved, but somehow it was organized that way so that they could do it. So it could be possible.
No, we obviously perfectly know about the frustrations you're talking about, and that's something we went through ourselves, or at least the architects among us. So we're definitely not all architects at Rotor. But much of what we do is to try and fuse the design process and the building process. And that is not always easy, obviously, because much of the way these professions are conceived is that they're meant to be separate. And also, again, for legal reasons. And so the fact that we want to fuse like design and building is also keeping us away from certain architectural commissions, and it makes that work not your average architecture office. Even if we wanted to, it would be a bit difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still, in terms of architectural practice, we're a marginal practice.
Okay, marginal is a good segue for the last question.
Is it?
Marginal and difficulties. You want to?
Sure. Okay, this is our last question, and it is, what was your proudest moment in your practice and your least proud moment, or your biggest failure? If you could.
You could be proud of your failures.
Or you could be proud of your failures, of course, but if you could just run us through those two instances.
Maybe. Like Lionel and I, we have different trajectories inside Rotor and perspectives as well. Maybe we should answer the question separately.
So personally, my biggest failure, or what I consider as a big failure, was it was a reclamation project, a deconstruction project where we reclaimed quite a big surface of wooden floor, but this one was glued with kind of black tar containing glue, and a part of it we accepted to, let's say, the goal was to sell it to a professional. In the end, the architects really wanted to buy some, and we accepted. But it means that they received a completely raw material with the remains of the glue under the wooden blocks, and their contractor tried to clean these wooden blocks on the site with the wrong machinery and the wrong technique. So it produced a lot of black black dust, actually, that the people on the construction site had to breathe, and one of them became ill. I mean, this construction, we were not on the construction site, but we heard afterwards that it was that it had been a nightmare, actually, just because they were not using the right protections, and they were not doing things the right way. So that's yeah, that was a hard
Traumatizing.
yes, but we learned from it, because what we do now is that we every time we have a similar type of wooden floor, we firstly have an agreement with a specialized player who is preparing all the wooden blocks by sanding one of the surfaces, so that we can actually sell something that is just ready to be placed. So we don't leave the client the possibility of doing something stupid with it.
Of being exposed. Do you have any chemical engineer or industrial designer in Rotor?
Yeah, I'm the biochemist from the team.
Okay.
That's maybe the reason why I feel.
That's why you feel it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Biggest failure, I would say it's. I talked about it in the beginning. When you look at the URL of Rotor, it still is rotordb.org. So, and that refers to that very first ambition of Rotor to be a database for industrial leftover materials in Belgium. So that was really the kind of agenda we had imposed ourselves when we were working in that temporary office up there in Brussels. But that's a project that never came through, actually, and so you might say it's a foundational failure for Rotor, and so it's like everything that Rotor has become everything that proceeded from that failure, or that initial failure. But and the reason for it not to work is that it's mostly a question of personal relationships and faith. Like we had visited hundreds of companies that are producing interesting industrial waste products, and we established links with them, and so we integrated them in our would-be database. But then quickly we realized that if we hand over that database to third parties, they did not respect the kind of trust you have with these people, and so it's difficult to have somebody coming to your company with trucks moving all around who comes and wants to take out of your containers only like 10 kilos of a material. When you're in industry, everything needs to happen in big quantities, and you need to, I mean, you need a certain rigor also in dealings, and it appeared to be impossible to impose the users of the database to have that same rigor. So it just failed flatly, and we had to find other ways to make it happen.
But the URL is still DB.
Still what?
It's still DB. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the URL didn't change, so
No,
it's
it
still
didn't.
rotordb.
Yeah.
You.
Understand DB. Yeah, it's like a remember of that initial, a reminder of that initial agenda, ambition.
Okay. Good.
Pride.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, we need to hear.
The pride. Okay. The proud.
Yeah.
Forget about that one.
It's also very showing images of strange idea. Can you take that off?
Sorry, the image.
I hear myself. The image, by any.
Yeah. The wear and tear.
The wear and tear exhibition. Let's say that's it was the first time that we had, let's say, such a visibility with a project that was purely cultural, and let's say as a complement to our engagement on the field in making reuse of building components possible or make it happening. It was also interesting to have the confirmation of the fact that we were capable of bringing some cultural content in a form of, in this case, an exhibition on the issue of wear and tear, or wear under the impact of human use. And let's say the feedback we got on that exhibition, also from people like Rem Koolhaas, was let's say very nice to have, and allowed us to develop let's say like a parallel career in exhibition making that we're still pursuing, and that obviously we get much gratification from.
And so the OMA exhibition was after?
The OMA exhibition was after, and it's an immediate result of that appearance in Venice, you might say, yeah.
Which we also, I visited at the Barbican, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, that was also great. Great to see the ugly models, all the mistakes, all this kind of backstage stuff. That was very refreshing for an exhibition. Okay. And Lionel, the biochemist, any proud...
We have a bit of a freeze going on. And Panica's here. I think we lost them.
Oh, really?
Give them a minute. We need to thank them. That's the number one thing we have to do still.
But we are still alive.
Yeah, we're still alive. Okay, we're back. Okay, great.
Yeah, the call just fell through for a while.
Yeah, indeed. You don't know what happened. Lionel still owes you his proudest moment.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, maybe something. It's also something recent, or something more recent. It's yeah. For us, we've always been looking at what was happening in the US in terms of reclamation of building materials, and we had the impression that Europe was a kind of
Lagging behind.
Yeah, lagging behind on this matter. And recently we've been invited as keynote speakers for the DECON conferences, which is kind of a yearly gathering of the reuse sector in the US. And so the fact that they invite us to introduce the session is yeah, it makes us very proud. Yeah.
Cool. DECON.
Yeah.
DECON, yeah.
Cool. We look forward to feedback when you come back.
Okay. Yeah. We just want to say thank you very much for talking to us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. Keep up the good work, I would say. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe we speak to you in the future.
All right. Okay. Take care.
Ciao.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Awesome. Okay, bye people.